Today I'm celebrating World Art Day. Art has become a way of life for me. A relationship with reality where I'm trying to play and create and turn everything that I do into a form of artwork, whether that's helping to raise children or organising events or community projects. But it was quite late in life that I realised how art is an attitude, a relationship with life, as opposed to a skill that you have a natural inborn talent in. You know, when I was young, I was put off the idea of artwork by an art teacher, ironically enough, who disdainfully threw scorn at some of my pictures and put me off wanting to put pen to paper for a very long time. It's a real shame that it's taken so long for certainly myself, but for others too, I think, to realise that creativity is something that is hardwired into our nature as human beings, that it's something that has been suppressed and trained out of us largely by civilization. Not necessarily on purpose, but just by the very nature of accepting things that, you know, that there are certain ways of doing things, that if it's not the done thing, then it's not right, it's not appropriate, and this strangles creativity quite obviously. Even now, as an older man, it's something that I wrestle with. I've seen people suggest that being creative is both a blessing and a curse, and I think that that's really just because of today's society and how the need to pay rent means that one only gets to invest in one's creativity if one can make money from it, or if one's lucky enough to have inherited loads of money or not need to pay for somewhere to live. And so that's really distorted the world of art and creativity generally. Personally, I see art as something which shows its origins way, way back in human history. I mean, it's clear that the oldest known artifacts that we have, or commonly accepted artifacts, are cave paintings. Now, how much are these expressions of art or magic, and what's the difference between the two? The idea of being able to create an image, to create something which doesn't exist in the normal sense of things, that doesn't possess its own life, but yet can be imbued with life. What were those cave paintings that supposedly primitive man was daubing upon those walls? What were they there to achieve? What were they doing? Were they part of the hunting process? Were they trying to memorialize something that for them was, you know, an early form of photograph? I'm dubious about that. But what's really clear is that those people that did those paintings had what we would consider now to be an incredible artistic ability. Could they just draw like that from the word go? Were they masters that we were looking at? Because their depictions were so accurate. They were impressionistic, but at the same time they had an understanding of proportion. Was that just natural flair they had? Was that the one or two unusual people in the tribe that had that capacity? Or was this just an outpouring of their humanity that anyone could tap into? We don't have to look very far back into human civilization to find examples of communities where, rather than having musicians or performers that everyone then just observes as a passive audience, music was created collectively. Everybody in the tribe was a musician, everybody in the tribe was a dancer, everybody was an actor. There was even the term actor is a very recent addition to language etymologically. Prior to the beginnings of theatre in ancient Greek times, there was no chorus, there was no stage, there was no audience. Everybody participated in the enactment of mythology and the telling of stories. So something very interesting has happened in those last few thousand years since the advent of The idea of performer and audience, of spectator and, that observer mindset that feels that it can remain detached from reality and therefore is disempowered from the creative process. So today my celebration of World Art Day seeks to touch the artist in you and to honour the artist in me that struggles so much to find a way to coexist with the rat race and the demands to pay rent and pay taxes and pay inordinate amounts for food because I don't have a piece of land in my name, because I don't have a share of the commonwealth whereby I'm able to sustain myself without breaking laws. It seems like a lot to say, maybe, relating World Art Day to the global suffering and the inequality that exists between those that have a share in the land and all the wealth that comes from it, and those that have been, through the Enclosures Acts, made strangers on the land, alienated from the land. And so therefore we just have to scrabble to survive in those little spaces that exist for us, meanwhile enriching those people who have their name on a piece of land. It's funny because in this way I see the support of artwork as something very, very primal. The support of art and the appreciation of art is supposed to be helping us to find right relationship with ourselves and with each other and the world. And yet the trouble is, it's so difficult to find art that really speaks to us now. We've become so immune to what comes through our eyes. How can, even as someone who appreciates the beauty of the world and of people's creations, I find myself walking through a gallery of photographs, finding myself numb to them because there are, we just see photographs and images just pouring at us out of our screens. And what makes a photograph interesting these days? One really has to go some distance, and it's so difficult to do that without just being more extreme and more extreme. And now I find it very rare now that I enter a gallery and a piece of artwork really speaks to me, really says something to me, without it having to read a little caption by the side to try and, glean some kind of meaning or message. It used to be that artwork impressed itself on people. The best books, the best theatre, the best cinema doesn't require someone to narrate it for you. I mean, for sure, English teachers have always brought the language of Shakespeare to life, and but really that's just because we've come a century or two since that time and therefore struggle to understand what it was that they were saying. The people that went to attend those Shakespeare performances at the Globe Theatre in the early days wouldn't have required translation. They could see and feel what was going on the stage. They understood what was happening, and the best work doesn't require that translation or that extra communication to make it comprehensible. And yet we are so estranged from the creative process and from the identity of the artists whose work we're observing that it becomes, well, let's just say it's harder and harder to affect and to be affected by the artworks that we encounter. Ever since Duchamp's Urinal, where he was clearly taking the piss but showing how artwork has become such an artifice today. It really seems to be just about what sort of price tag you can attach to somebody's creative endeavour. That's not to say that there aren't people that are selling their work for good money because they are creating beautiful things, but yeah, you can see that for me this world of art and creativity is so embroiled in the social, political, human situation that we find ourselves in these crazy times. So anyway, these are my reflections for today. I could probably go on for hours, but this is my participation in the celebration of World Art Day.